Okay, welcome. So today is our Move into Stillness meeting. And if you were here last week or you listened to the recording from last week, then you'll recall that I had promised that this week we're going to explore some movements together, and I had invited you to be prepared if at all possible. So if you're not, then either way, I'll give you some suggestions for how you can make the most of it. So first of all, I'll be suggesting that we'll do some explorations in a couple of different positions, mostly sitting and lying down. And so if you can do both of those, that would be excellent. If you cannot, then you can choose which one you can do, and you'll just only do the explorations in that position. So for sitting, you could do them sitting on the floor, but most people are probably going to have it'll probably be better to sit in a chair. And if at all possible, it would be better to sit in a chair that has a firm, flat surface, and it's not going to cause you to sink back into the chair, because you want to be able to be upright and be able to feel yourself sitting in that chair. So that would be the ideal if that's possible. If it's not, then you make use of whatever you have. And so we'll be starting with the seated explorations, but you'll also want to be prepared if you're going to be able to do the explorations lying down. When we get to that, then you're going to want a flat surface that you can lie down on that is moderately padded, not so much that you sink into it or that you can't really feel adequately the sensations of the body on that surface. But on the other hand, it shouldn't be so firm that you feel uncomfortable. So you want to find that happy medium. For most people, that's going to be like a carpeted floor or a rug on the floor or a yoga mat or something of that sort. And for the movements that we're going to be doing today, it's very unlikely, it's unlikely that you're going to need any books. It's possible some people would want some paperback books to place under the head when we get to that point. So we'll get started with the movements momentarily. And before we do, I want to give you a little bit of preparatory information that will help you, or some guidance that will help you to make the most of this. And it's not anything that you probably haven't heard before, but it's very important. So see if you can hear it with fresh ears, so to speak. So rather than just thinking, oh, I've already heard this, I already know this, see that it's possible to actually understand something deeper and more helpful in it than what you've already understood. Because I assure you that is possible. And no matter how expert you may be, there's always more that can be understood. It can be understood in a subtler way. It can be understood in a way that will reveal things to you that otherwise you would miss out on if you just thought you already knew it. So I'll remind you that in our exploration of somatics, that what we are really doing here is we're presenting and exploring the remedy for the problem, which is sensory motor amnesia. So sensory motor amnesia means that you're doing something, but you've forgotten that you're doing it. So your brain essentially is, and it's really the lower portion of the brain, is controlling your body and causing specifically your muscles to do something, to take some action, to maintain some kind of tone or tension, and you have forgotten entirely that you're doing that. Or if you are at all aware that you're doing it, you have no idea how you're doing it, and you don't know how to stop doing it. you are also unable to properly sense what it is that you're doing. And so the feedback is still getting to your conscious portion of your brain, but instead of properly recognizing what it is that you're doing, which would allow you to stop doing it, instead you sense it as something different. And that something different could be pain, it could be discomfort, it could be strain, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be so many different types of manifestations, but they're the incorrect interpretation by the conscious portion of the brain because you've lost the conscious awareness of what that sensation actually is. Okay, so that's what we're addressing. And another important point here is that your muscles don't do anything on their own. Now, this is really good news. And I'm reminding you of this before we do the movements, because otherwise, what we will almost invariably do is fall back into the old unconscious habits, and we'll just do the movement unconsciously, and then you won't get the benefits that are available to you. So in terms of what, also proper expectation is very important. So you need to have a positive expectation about what is possible. So because you are doing, you're unconsciously doing the things that are causing you these unwanted symptoms, and you're doing that presently. It's not something that you were doing in the past, although you might have been doing it in the past, but the past action is not causing you the present discomfort or whatever the symptom may be. It's the present action, albeit unconscious, but nonetheless, it's the present action that is causing these, the present symptoms. And so why is this really important? It's really important because when you understand this, you can have the proper positive expectation that as soon as you become aware of what it is that you're doing, you can cease to do it. And as soon as you cease to do it, the symptoms will go away. What that means is you don't have, we usually have the wrong expectation. Wrong expectation is some kind of negative expectation like, well, nothing will work, or I'll just be like this forever, or it will be just a long, long struggle forever and ever and ever, and maybe things will get a little bit better really slowly, but never enough. Or something along those lines. It could also be just, you know, the best I can hope for is some sort of palliation, but I can't really expect to really cure whatever the actual cause is, and thereby get real lasting relief. So those are the wrong expectations, but notice how those are the expectations that have been conditioned into us. And so they're just automatic, they're reflexive. And we want to be conscious of that and then consciously choose the positive expectation, which is truthful and which, because it matches with the facts. So you have an emotional attachment to the wrong thing. We all do. But we want to just see that and then being presented with the facts, which we've covered many, many times, so I won't belabor it. I've reviewed it briefly today. But those facts are that you have sensory motor amnesia. So at least some of your symptoms are due to sensory motor amnesia. And that sensory motor amnesia is remedied by awareness. And that awareness that conscious awareness can be reclaimed virtually instantaneously. So you should have the proper expectation that something really miraculous can and will indeed happen. And it will happen to the extent that you really give yourself to the exploration fully with the proper expectation. Okay, so with all that said, we're going to start by, we're going to do the first few explorations seated. So I want you to sit, preferably, as I've said, on a firm, flat surface, a firm, flat seat, so that you're not going to sink back into a backrest. So you want to, if possible, be scooted forward so that you're not going to roll back into the backrest. And then you want to ideally have both your feet on the floor. Now, this is all, remember, you make do with whatever you have, but to the best of your ability, you give yourself the best setup possible. So if possible, you have your feet on the floor. If you can't get your feet on the floor because the chair is too high, then bring the floor to your feet by putting something under the feet, like some books, preferably books that are equal thickness, so that your feet are elevated equal amounts. And then what I'd like you to do is, first of all, just close your eyes and feel what this experience is. So somatic exploration means that we're exploring what it is to be a soma. So a soma is not a body, really, because a soma might function through a body, it might animate a body, but soma is certainly not limited to or defined by a body. And so I want you to start to allow yourself to notice your somatic self, that is independent of the body. Notice that you have a sense of presence, a sense of being, and a sense of being in space and in time. So this isn't like supreme being, ultimate being, but it's the sense of being in space and time. So just get a clear sense of yourself as this somatic self in space and time. And so you can actually feel that, and that's important. You want to feel, you want to sense. So you can notice that there is an up, and there's a down, and there's a left, and a right, and a forward, and a backward. So all of these directions are, and anytime that I give the directions, I will at least endeavor to my best of my ability to remember to give those directions relative to the somatic self. So whether you are lying down or you're sitting up or any other position, up is whatever is up for the somatic self. So it would be what you would normally associate with your head. But the soma doesn't really have a head, but it's what you would normally associate with your head. And likewise, forward would be what you normally associate as the direction where your face is. And left and right are obviously left and right relative to the up and forward. So get a sense of that, the directionality of your somatic self in space. And why is this important? Well, it's actually of tremendous importance because really, truthfully, you could discover somatic freedom without having to do any movement, because it's really just about the awareness. So, but of course we will be doing movement, but I want to emphasize why this is so important. So don't trivialize it or try to skip over it. I want you to really sense into this somatic self and notice the directions relative to the somatic self. So really feel this somatic self in space. Now, what we normally are so in the habit of doing is identifying as the body. And what that really means is we're identifying as some thoughts and some images. We've got a model. And this model would be fine if it was matched with the reality of the somatic self, but in sensory motor amnesia, it is not matched, it's not aligned. And so because of these mismatches, we experience, the sustained experience of sensory motor amnesia, because we're clinging to the model. The model is not properly calibrated or tuned to the deeper reality. So we want to start to have more awareness of the somatic self and start to notice where it's not really lining up with our mental image of the body. And you'll start to see how profound this is as you just start to sense into noticing somatically, just the somatic self, just the feeling self, where do you feel the discomfort? Where do you feel the out of alignment? Where do you feel that you're straining or making unnecessary effort? Start to notice where you feel numb, where you're holding on to something, where you experience some kind of resistance or strain or tension or apprehension or frustration, where there's some kind of gripping. And just start to allow yourself to actually let that go. So you don't have to worry about keeping the body upright or maintaining an image or any of that kind of thing, because we're really just feeling into the somatic self, which isn't bound by the body. It doesn't have those constraints. It doesn't have to project an image. It doesn't have to get anything right. It doesn't have to be upright. It doesn't have to do any of those things. It just has to feel itself properly. Notice that as you do this, you actually start to feel a little more ease. You have to participate in it. It's not going to just happen to you, but as you choose to feel into your somatic self and to allow for the somatic self to what would we say here? Unravel, I guess, or release into its own natural state of ease. You just notice that active participation, that active exploration of your somatic self allows you to actually start to feel better, to experience more ease. And you can start to have some awareness of the breath. Notice that you can be aware of the breath without having without consulting your mental model of the body. Because if you make that mistake, then the breath becomes just this mechanical thing and you're back in the old pattern. But if you start to just notice the breath as the movement of life, and you start to just allow that and receive that, then you start to notice that is actually this subtle impulse of movement, like a wave within the somatic self, and it's sort of ecstatic if you allow it. And if you are thinking, it's ecstasy is the last word I would apply to my current experience, that's okay. It will happen. You'll discover it. You just be patient and trust in the process. Be fully engaged and you'll discover it sooner or later. Okay, so now, even though we do have a little bit of a challenge, okay, even though the soma is not limited or defined by a body, giving instructions for movement without referencing the body is quite challenging. So until or unless we develop a system of communicating directly to the soma without referencing the body, we'll have to reference the body for the movements. But this is a challenge, but you just have to embrace the challenge. And even though the directions are going to suggest that you give your attention to the body, I want you to keep your attention the best you can on the somatic self and just feel and allow for this aliveness to really be your guide rather than consulting the old mechanical model that's clunky and uncomfortable. Okay, so with that in mind, I'd like you to bring your hands, as long as it's comfortable to you. If it's too strenuous, then you needn't do it. But if you can do it without it being overly strenuous, I'd like you to bring your hands to your waist. So you can kind of wrap them around the waist so that the thumbs wrap around the back, and the rest of the fingers wrap around the front. And you can start to feel that, well, first of all, just notice how much more information suddenly you get when you touch, when you place your hands somewhere. It's like a light just got switched on. All this information is coming to you. And we want to really receive that information, because if we move too quickly, if we just leap forward before we acclimate to this new information, then we will not get as much benefit. So I want you to just really notice now what this new experience is, how all this information can be helpful to you. And notice how you have probably unwittingly introduced, or at least revealed, some habit of unnecessary effort. So maybe in the areas that you associate with your shoulders, you might notice some unnecessary strain. So as you just tune into the somatic self, you can just let that relax. Don't worry about trying to position the shoulders, because remember, that's just the mental model. If you try to position the shoulders, then you'll get it all wrong, and you'll get very frustrated because you'll be fighting against yourself. But just feel into it somatically. Start to notice where the strain is, where the effort is, and just let that go, let that relax, let it dissolve, so that you're not making that effort. Could be in the areas that you associate with the tops of your shoulders, or the areas that you associate with the shoulder blades, or the area that you associate with the sides of the neck. Could be anywhere really, but those are some suggestions. And then you're just breathing, and if at any point this becomes uncomfortable, you've got a couple of options. First of all, you could really explore what is uncomfortable about it, and be curious about what it is that you're doing that you could become aware of, that you could stop doing, that might allow you to experience more comfort. Because there's no reason why this needs to be uncomfortable. Structurally, it's absolutely fine. So it would just be something functionally that you're in the habit of doing that's unnecessary. So that's one option. And that could be very profitable if you can explore that successfully. But then, of course, if you just feel overwhelmed and you don't seem to be able to identify what it is that you're doing, and at any point you just feel too much stress or strain or whatever, you relax. You don't need to do anything to yourself that is going to make you feel worse. That's definitely not what this is about. But I want you to know that it's also good news if that happens, because then you've identified, wow, there's something that I can continue to explore patiently, persistently, not just today, but over however long it takes. It could be 1 minute, it could be 1 hour, it could be a day, it could be a week. But if I patiently and lovingly explore, then I know that this is where I can discover freedom. So see, that's how the good news. There's always good news, even when what we discover is frustration or discomfort or pain, or just means that we've encountered something that we were previously not aware of in that way. And so now that awareness is awakening in us. And if we continue to explore, we will discover the freedom. That's the wonderful, wonderful good news about it. So always take heart, but also never push yourself into unnecessary pain or strain. So you be gentle, and remember that. It's always a fine balance, and we tend to err on one side or the other, and that's okay. That's part of the learning process, but just be looking for that razor's edge. It's neither one side or the other, and you will discover something wonderful. So now we've just got the hands on the waist, and see, don't squeeze hard. Just let the weight of the arms do the work for you. You just have the hands there, but you're breathing, and just notice what you feel there. What are you doing? What is that breath like? And do you feel any points in that are tender? So we have a lot of reasons why you might discover tender points in there. And you should take it as a good indication if you discover that, if you discover any tenderness, because what that means is you've just discovered a point where you can soon encounter greater freedom, because that tenderness is due to sensory motor amnesia. It just means that you're unknowingly holding some tension there, because the tenderness is because of that tension. That tension means that your muscles are contracted chronically, and that chronic muscular activity creates a buildup of lactic acid, and that lactic acid sends a signal. Your brain will interpret that as pain or tenderness or soreness. So when you encounter that, just know that's where you're going to soon discover freedom. So then you're just breathing and noticing the movement of the breath, noticing how is that? Do you notice differences on the two sides? What do you feel on the two sides as you breathe? Do they feel even, or is one side different than the other? Is one side tighter than the other? Is one side clearer than the other? Is one side tenderer than the other? And remember, you can always rest. So don't strain. There's no benefit in that. You just see, first of all, how much more can you rest while just sitting here with the hands on the waist, breathing, because it could be a very restful position. So always explore that to the best of your ability. But then if that exceeds your present ability to let go or to discover, then you make whatever adjustment you need in order to give yourself the rest so that you're not straining. Now, do you notice that as you're continuing to breathe with awareness with your hands placed here, on the one hand, it seems like you're not doing anything. On the other hand, are you discovering that you're able to release more and more? You feel that you can breathe more easily, as you should. So know that that's definitely possible and highly likely. It's the intended outcome. It's what you should be experiencing if you just let yourself. And if you encounter any, when I suggest that you should, if you encounter any kind of frustration or anything, just notice what's the consequence of that, or what goes along with that somatically. So we interpret that sensation as frustration or whatever else maybe. But notice somatically, what is that experience? Do you hold your breath? Do you tense up? Do something to try and endure something? Don't endure anything, just be aware. See, how much more can I let go of? What can I let go of in the areas where I'm holding on? Then slowly, very slowly, release the hands down so that you can remain aware of hopefully that greater ease and supple quality in the sides, on the waist, maybe even in the rib cage, maybe even on the front and the back of the torso. All right, so now be aware of the breath. Has the breath changed? What are the habits that want to reassert themselves, where you want to kind of go back into the old way? And just see that you don't need to do that, because the old way wasn't really working very well. And what you should have discovered through these past few minutes of exploration is something that's actually better, more easeful. Now, your brain at first says it's hard, but that's because it makes the mistake. It thinks that what's new or unfamiliar is hard, but that's not true. It's just unfamiliar. So you have to let it become familiar. Don't cling to it as the one true thing, because that would just be making the mistake of enforcing some new, likely incorrect or incomplete mental model. You'll be back into a similar kind of position as you were before, but instead just stay with the somatic awareness. So you just notice that you don't need to tense up in that old familiar way. You don't need to hunch over. You don't need to do that thing with your shoulders that you usually do. You don't need to do any of that. You can just let the breath be easy. Notice where you have a habit of forcing it, where you have a habit of squeezing, where you have a habit of unnecessary effort, and just let it be easeful. So now we're going to do a little bit of exploration with turning to the side a little bit. So what I'd like you to do is start by becoming aware of your right elbow. And I want you to slowly begin to, and if you can let your arms dangle at the sides freely, then that would be a good starting position. If you can't, then you can let them rest on your lap. Or if you're in a chair that has armrests and you can't avoid that, and it's best for you to let them rest on the armrest, you can do that. But I want you to become aware of the right elbow. And you're not going to move yet, but I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. And then after I tell you what you're going to do, you're going to imagine it. You're going to feel what that would be like without actually doing the movement. And then I'll instruct you to move after that. So the movement that you will do, but you're not going to do yet, is that you're going to bring the right elbow backward in space. So I want you to imagine what that would be, how you would do that. And now that you've imagined that, I want you to actually do it. I want you to bring that right elbow backward. Just see what that is, how you can do that, and let it be gentle. There's no prize for bringing your elbow as far back as possible. You just bring it back as within your range, without it being strenuous, without you using unnecessary momentum or violence to fling your elbow. You want to do it with awareness and control, and then you want to slowly release the elbow and just let it come to wherever it comes to. So if your starting position was your arms dangling at sides, if you when you release it, your arms are likely to come back into the dangling position, unless there's some weird thing happening. But if your forearms are making contact with something, then when you release the elbow, your arms aren't necessarily going to come back to the starting position, and that's fine. You just want to release. You don't want to push back or try to bring the elbow forward. You want to just release it. So now do that a few more times. I want you to just bring the elbow backward. And it really doesn't have to be a big movement, especially if your forearm is in contact with something and there's friction there. It could be a tiny little movement. That's okay. It's really just about getting clarity on it. And then each time you release, I want you to pay special attention to that. I want you to really notice how slowly you can do that. So you're going to repeat this several more times. And each time I want you to see like a little game. You want to see how slowly can you release and how thoroughly can you release. Because this is the pandiculation, is in the release of that. Because, and this is where you're going to get the most benefit. So if there's any kind of sensory motor amnesia in anything involved in this movement, then when you slowly release it, that's where you're going to become aware. And so you see how slowly and all the way. So the last little bit is the most important. That's the part where we usually just tune out. But that's the part you want to be the most aware. Because what you'll start to feel is this certain strange experience where you're not sure if you've really completely let it go or not. And that's wonderful. That means that you're starting to become aware. So you just repeat that a few more times. And each time that you do it now, I want you to see how much more can you be aware of. So at first, the awareness is just kind of localized in one place, just kind of aware of one kind of sensation. But see, is this movement really just one muscle? Or does it involve the whole body? So we've talked about in recent meetings, we talked about the somatic center. So I want you to start to feel, is there something from the core, from the somatic center that's involved in this movement? Can you feel that? And can you start to really feel that whole connection? And maybe you start to even notice, what about the whole spine? Can you feel, does the head, without moving the head, but does the head actually want to move? Does the head get moved by this movement? And just start to feel that and notice that. And one more time, and then really see how slowly can you release the whole thing. And notice along the waist. So we brought all of that awareness earlier on to the waist. Can you really feel how the waist can let go even more? Such an interesting thing. You wouldn't necessarily think it, but if you really pay attention, you'll notice, wow, the waist, didn't realize the waist was there's tension in there that I didn't know about, but I can let that go. Okay. So now let's do the same to the other side. So now I want you you're not going to move yet, but I want you to bring your awareness to the left elbow. And I want you to imagine that you're moving the left elbow backward. then you're imagining that you're releasing it. And now that you've imagined it, I want you to actually do it slowly, gently. You just move the elbow, the left elbow backward, just as much as is comfortable that you have control over. There's no benefit in you just flinging yourself around. You can go do an aerobics class if you want to do that. But you want to just do it with awareness and control. And you're going to do this many times slowly. So you're going to slowly bring it back, and then even more slowly, you're going to release the elbow. And importantly, you're not trying to push it forward back to the starting position. You're just releasing it. So if there's friction with the forearm, you just let that be there, and you're just releasing. So do that many more times, and each time see how much more can you be aware of. And this time, see, can you be aware of not only the left side, but also the right side as you're doing this action. So oftentimes we start by just having our attention very narrowly focused on one little spot or one muscle group. And then we can broaden that, but often it will stay just on one side. Now we're going to see, can you become aware of the whole body, the right side, the left side, the front, the back, the whole somatic self, the whole soma. Start to feel, can you start to move and release with ease and flow and grace, so that you're replacing that clunky, dysfunctional mental model of your body with a fluid, graceful, enjoyable, pleasurable sense of yourself as a soma, so that you can experience movement and release with awareness. And then do one last time, and see that you can do the release as slowly and thoroughly all the way to the very, very end as possible. And you'll discover so much in that. So don't cheat yourself by rushing through anything. Okay, so when and if you are ready, then you can lie down on your back, and take care that you do so slowly and gently. Don't just fling yourself, because if you do that, you kind of would lose some of the benefits of what we've just explored. Now, if it's too late and you're already flying yourself, it's okay. It's everything. You didn't lose everything, just a little bit, and that's okay. It's all a learning process. And I want you to know and really take heart that whatever you discover, whatever ease, whatever relief, whatever little glint of light that you discover, know that that's just the start, and that so much is available, that it can get better and better and better and better. So remember, the wrong expectation, which is how we normally go into things, would have us say, oh, it's never going to work for me, and oh, I've lost it, or it's too little, it's not enough, or I was just making it up, or any number of things. But I want you to really start to understand it differently and see any tiny little benefit at all, any little improvement, any little release, any little new awareness, any even a hint of freedom or ease is just proof of the wonder that is available. So it just is, it's like you're walking on a path, and somebody has told you that there up ahead is a wondrous land filled with so much goodness, but you haven't yet seen it. You're walking on this path and it's dark and you can't see it yet. But then you come crest a small hill and you catch a little shimmer of something in the distance. Now, as you continue to walk and you go back down the hill, you lose sight of it. And at that point, you could despair and you could say, oh, no, it's all fake. There's nothing real to it. But that's the wrong way to understand it. The right way to understand it is, I saw the truth. It's there. All I have to do is continue. That's it. Just put one foot in front of the other, and my success is guaranteed. It is there for me. And you will catch many more glimpses of it because there will be more hills. You'll crest the hill, you'll see it. You'll see it's getting closer and closer. You'll have more, it will be more and more real for you. The key is you just have to continue. So any little hint is a wonderful sign. It's proof. You're seeing it. You're on the right path. You just continue. So now you're lying down. If you are going to lie down on your back, you're lying down on your back, and you're going to find a way, if possible, to gently bend the knees and place the feet, the soles of the feet on the floor near to the buttocks. So your knees will be up. Up is the wrong direction. Your knees will be forward in the direction of the ceiling. So forward relative to your somatic self, but in the direction of the ceiling in the room that you're in, or the sky if you're outside. And so feet are flat on the surface, near to the buttocks, as close as you can get them comfortably. And your knees are in the direction of the ceiling. And you're going to place your, make sure that you're comfortable. If you feel strain, sometimes people are so much strain in the neck that they find it challenging to have their head resting in this way. So if you find it too uncomfortable and you need to elevate the head a little bit, you may do so. I would suggest something like a paperback book, because it's firm and yet not soft. So that's usually a good thing to use if you need to elevate the head. So you want to make sure that you're reasonably comfortable. You don't want to be straining. If you feel hesitant about how to have your knees bent and toward the ceiling, because you feel like they want to flop all around, and just play around a little bit with placement of the feet, a little bit wider, a little bit narrower, a little bit closer, a little bit further from the buttocks, whatever you see. How can you do that to have a more stable experience? And feel that the leg bones, the femurs, the bones in the thighs are, feel how the portion that is closest to the hip, you want to feel that that's really just allowed to rest into the surface that you're on, rather than you trying to tense it up and do something with it. You let the weight of that entire thigh sink into the surface that you're on, so that the surface can do the work for you rather than you working needlessly, strenuously. So you just let the surface do the work for you. And then you're going to place your hands on your waist again. if that's comfortable for you. If it's not comfortable for you, you needn't do it. An alternative would be you could place them on the hips. So the waist is obvious to me, at least the waist is further up relative to your somatic self. It's further up than the hips. So often people have a distorted sense of hips and waist. Waist is further up. It's above the iliac crests of the pelvis, and the hips are lower than that. So you have options there, if possible, to comfortably place the hands on the waist. You'll do so and do in the same way that you did before. So the thumbs are wrapping around the back and the rest of the fingers around the front. And if neither of the waist nor the hips are comfortable, you just let the arms and hands rest at the sides. And you're just breathing and noticing the breath. And I want you to start to notice that as you inhale, let the entire front side of the body be soft. So start to be really aware, because most of the time, and this is red light reflex, which virtually everybody is dealing with. We hold a lot of unnecessary tension on the front side of the body, and we're not aware of it. That's the nature of sensory motor amnesia. We have no idea that we're doing it. To us, we think that it's just how it has to be. It's perfectly natural. But I want you to know that it can be softer and more relaxed, and it will allow you to breathe more freely. It will allow you to feel so much more comfortable. It will allow you to sit upright more confidently. It will allow you to stand upright more confidently. It will allow your digestion to be much more powerful and confident and comfortable. So be aware as you inhale that the entire front side of the body can be soft, should be soft. And if it's not, just start to notice that actually just by being aware of it, you can begin to release the unnecessary tension. This is really a powerful thing to be aware of. You don't need to do any big movements. You don't need to have any kind of fancy, complicated anatomy study. You don't need to have none of that is necessary. All that's really necessary is the awareness. So as soon as you are aware that you're holding that tension, that it's not as soft and yielding as it could be or really ought to be, then you are empowered. You have all the power at that point that is necessary in order to release it. Now you aren't yet sure entirely how to use that power. That's okay. That's because you're learning. So you don't despair. Don't fall into overwhelm or frustration. Just know it's good news that if you can become aware of the unnecessary tension, then you can, in fact, release it. And just be patient and persistent, and you will discover exactly what I'm talking about. So each time you inhale, you just notice that you can let that front side of the body soften even more. And I want you to start to notice how big that the softness of the abdomen is. So it really goes very low down, all the way down to the pubic bone, and very broad all the way across the hips and all the way around the sides, all around the waist, and all the way up to the lowest ribs, which are actually much higher up than you think. So now we can add to this. So each time you inhale, I want you to slowly start to, and very slowly, just a small movement, especially at first, just start to allow the pelvis to roll downward. So you could imagine that the pelvis is like you could use whatever image works for you. For some people, what works best is to imagine a bowl, and you could just imagine that bowl rolling downward so that it's tipping down toward the feet. Or if you prefer an image of like a rolling pin, you can imagine a rolling pin that's rolling down toward the feet. So each time you inhale, you're letting the entire abdomen, the entire chest even, become soft, broad, and long. As you let the pelvis roll downward just a little bit, don't go crazy. And as you exhale, you just release that. And see that as you exhale, you can continue to allow for that softness in the abdomen. There's no need for you to tense up in the abdomen for this movement because it's not necessary. So each time you inhale, you let the front side of the body become even softer and longer and broader, more supple. And each time, and you let the pelvis roll downward. And of course, as you're doing that, you notice that the lower back arches, well, the whole back arches actually. Just a little bit, doesn't need to be exaggerated. And then as you exhale, you just release all of that so that the abdomen remains soft, chest remains soft, but you can start to feel the pelvis just gently rolls back to neutral, and you can start to notice that neutral is maybe not where you thought it was, and you can really let the entire backside relax and lengthen. So each time you inhale, as the front side is lengthening and softening, the back side of the body is just ever so slightly contracting. So the small amount of effort that's involved is coming from the back side, from the lower back and the back side of the pelvis. You're allowing the front side to be soft and broad and long, supple. And then when you release and you exhale, just a natural exhalation, not forced. You let the belly remain soft and you let everything come to a new neutral. And you notice that this new neutral allows the new awareness of the entire backside of the body, that you can let the entire backside of the body be softer and longer. So each time you're doing it, remember the release is where you want to give special attention. So I want you to be particularly slow and aware as you release to neutral, and see that you can really let the backside of the body become softer and longer. You might start to notice that you can even feel the space between the shoulder blades start to get suppler. You can feel that space, maybe the shoulder blades start to spread. Maybe you can start to feel this pleasurable sensation of actually feeling your back, instead of just feeling the numbness and the discomfort and the strain. You actually start to feel the suppleness, the pleasure, the relaxation, the lengthening of the entire back side, all the way from the tailbone all the way to the shoulders. And as you're doing that, we'll just do a few more times, you're also noticing that, so each time you inhale, remember that the whole front side of the body has to soften. Why? Well, number one, because it feels good. And number two, because if you're not softening, lengthening, and releasing the front side of the body, then the back side has to work even harder to do even less. But if you let the front side of the body relax and open as it should, then the back side needs to do so little. It's virtually effortless, and it starts to feel really, really good, and you start to feel even more, and then you can release even more as you come back to neutral. And be sure that as you come back to neutral that you don't squeeze the front side of the body, because if you squeeze the front side of the body, trying to push the back into the surface that you're on, then you miss out on the opportunity to really let both the front and the back be supple and lengthened, which is what you want. You don't want to hold tension that's unnecessary anywhere. And this last couple times that you do it, I want you to also notice now, are the right and left sides even? Do you feel the weight evenly on both sides? Is the movement happening equally on both sides? You may find that it's not. You may find that one side is a little bit more than the other, a little different than the other. And just see that you can, with awareness, that you can just let them even out. And then the last time, just come to neutral and just rest. Let the hands rest at the side and feel how it is to allow yourself to experience this natural ease and suppleness. And remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Anything, any newness is a positive sign of success. And it means that you've discovered something true and wonderful, and that you just continue with it, and it will continue to unfurl, and you will see it's like an unending discovery of the ease and the pleasure that's possible. So you've had some experience of that. Whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter, because whatever that experience is, it's proof that it's true and that it's available to you. It's true for you. So you're on the right path. And you have this experience now of this ease, this suppleness, this softness that is available to you. And I want you to know that this is available to you always. So you want to remember that. You want to, that's one of those important messages that you want to it's like a direction that will keep you on the path. So you make note of that for yourself so that you know this is available always. And then you'll start to see in your life, as you go about your life, that you'll notice that the old habit creeps in here and there, and you want to start to contrast that with what you know is available, what you know is possible. And you want you to start to see what it is that what lies you accept as truths that have allowed for the unnecessary strain, discomfort, and pain in your life to repeatedly assert themselves and to take over your life. Because now you have something in contrast, and we want you to know, again, this is available to you. This, and even better, is available to you always. So when you find that the old ways have crept in, and the old tension and the old numbness and the old pain, I want you to remember that something much greater is available to you, and it's available to you always. So then don't despair and don't get frustrated and don't do any of those things. Instead, just look at it in a calm, clear, level-headed way, and just recognize, oh, there's something, some habit, some belief that I've been accepting is true, but it's actually false. And all I need to do is see it and then cease to indulge that. And I promise you that as you do that methodically, persistently, that you will uncover this greater and greater ease that is available to you always. And you will see that it really is true. And then you will be very happy. So be very gentle with yourself as we're going to wrap up now. But there's no need for you, unless there is for some reason, but there's no need for you to rush into anything. So please don't rush into anything. You take your time. If you're lying down, then I want you to take plenty of time to get up. I want you to start to explore how can you move from where you are to where you're going to be next without the unnecessary strain. Can you remain aware and allowing for this greater ease as you make that transition so that you can move into whatever's next with that continuous awareness of that ease? Remember, that's possible. And what makes that not just possible, but probable is your commitment to it. And so you just want to see how you have habitually accepted or believed that you need to fling yourself around and rush into things, and that everything's urgent and everything's so important. But ask yourself, what's more important than you living from the truthful experience? What could possibly be more important than that? Why would you possibly ever choose pain, strain, or distress over the ease that you know is available to you, or that at least you have hints are available to you? So start to be aware of that and question what you're doing and why you're doing it and whether it's really necessary. Start to move with awareness and give yourself that gift, because it's not just a luxury, it's your birthright. You have that as it's just who you are and what you're here for and why how you should be existing. So you can choose that, you should choose that. And so be aware of how you move and take time and be gentle and be kind and nourish yourself in all ways. So nourish yourself, obviously, with hydrating yourself and good food, also with good thoughts and good company and good care of yourself in all ways. So be very nourishing to yourself in all ways, and know that things can just continue to get better and better. So we'll wrap up the formal meeting. But as I say, take your time. There should be no rush. And one last note is that one, of course, byproduct of increased awareness is you have more awareness. So when you're more aware, that means that you're more aware of all of the other things that you were previously numb to. So don't fall into the trap of this voice that will tell you, now things seem to be worse, because it just means this won't necessarily happen, but sometimes it can happen that because you're more aware of the things that you were numb to, and then you start to say, oh, feeling all these things and they must be bad. Don't fall into that trap. Know that you're doing something wonderful for yourself that's truthful, and that you're on the right path, and you stay with it and you continue these explorations, and you know that you can, whatever sensations you can discover the deeper truth of it, how you can release the unnecessary effort, and you will discover greater and greater freedom and ease. So, and if you ever have any doubts, confusions, or anything, you let me know, because that's one of the reasons I'm here. Okay. So thank you, everybody. Blessings to you all, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.